Who's not ready? I'm assuming everyone's ready now. I have terminated Officer Carden Spencer. I have asked for a supplemental investigation of Christopher Watson to be conducted by Internal Affairs for additional questions I had of the investigation. Officer Carden Spencer has been charged with aggravated assault, a felony of the first degree. Officers are not above the law. We as the police department are not going to look the other way. We are not going to sweep officer misconduct under the rug. An officer's actions must be reasonable and necessary. I want to personally and professionally apologize to Mr. Bennett and the Bennett family for the actions of Officers Spencer and Watson. While officers express that they are in fear of their lives during critical incidents where deadly force is used, that fear must be a reasonable fear. And officers must use time and distance, when appropriate, as a reasonable alternative to using force. Why did it take 10 days to complete the criminal and administrative investigation, charge, and take employment action today? There are 3 separate legal processes occurring during an investigation of this nature. The first is a criminal process, which allows for those accused legal representation, fair and impartial treatment, due process, and a trial before a jury or judge. Second is employment law, which allows employers to compel employees to respond to an employer's request for information, but it also affords the accused employee a fair and impartial hearing, the ability to respond in writing to allegations, and levels of appeal to independent bodies. Any information received during this area of employment law cannot be used for criminal prosecution purposes. Third is potential civil litigation, which allows for a deposition, review of investigative processes and evidence, and trial before a jury or judge. What I have found to be true is rushed investigations and employment actions is wrought with mistakes, knee-jerk reactions, and perceptions of partiality. Rushed decisions making under this circumstances have led to not guilty verdicts and employment actions being overturned. In my opinion, the process followed to render decisions to charge and terminate an officer is as important as the decision itself. Why did you refuse to comment throughout the duration of this incident? It has taken great restraint and discipline to not comment during this process. In my opinion, a defense of the accused officer is that he were tried in public, did not receive a fair and impartial investigation, and was predisposed to be charged and fired by the chief because of media and/or political pressure. That is not the case here, and I have the scars to prove it. Finally, our detectives worked as quickly as was credibly practical and did an admirable job under very stressful circumstances. We must earn the public's trust and confidence every moment of every interaction with citizens. We have disciplined and criminally charged a number of officers, and while painful, this is necessary in order to gain, maintain, and improve the public's trust and confidence in the department. If you don't mind, I'm going to take us just a short time to go through the chronology of this investigation. There are perceptions that we did not immediately start an investigation and were prompted to start an investigation because of media pressure. I wanted to go through on the hard work that investigators did from the beginning of the incident happening till today. Monday, October 14th, the shooting occurs, 9400 block of Crimson Court. Special Investigative Unit detectives respond to the scene. Homicide supervisors dispatched to a Baylor emergency room. Detectives canvass the cul-de-sac there in the neighborhood for witnesses of the incident. Crime scene detectives and technicians arrive and begin the crime scene search and processing. Special Investigative Unit detectives interview Mr. Bennett's mother and her neighbor, Mr. Maurice Bunch. Detectives learn that Mr. Bunch has video of the incident. Copies of that video are transferred to 2 flash drives for redundancy. 3 additional neighbors are interviewed, none of which witnessed the incident. Business cards are left at residences where no one answered the door. At one of those residences, detectives noted a bullet marking in the window. Crime scene response detectives took photographs, marked and identified items within the immediate area of the shooting, took measurements, recovered evidence. Several items were recovered, but notable 4 spent shell casings and 1 folding pocket knife with the blade open. Additionally, detectives photographed Officer Cardine Spencer's inventoried the number of unspent rounds in his duty weapon and magazine and seized his duty weapon. Lieutenant Barbara Hobbs, the Special Investigative Unit on-scene commander, is advised of the video capturing the incident that witnessed Bunch and confers with the shooting team, the police department shooting team. Witness Officer Christopher Watson conducts his walkthrough of the shooting incident at 2 p.m. that same day the shooting occurs. Officer Spencer declines to conduct a walkthrough on advice of his attorney until he views the video. Let me interject here that our longstanding policy is that the officer that is involved, that discharges the weapon, is allowed to see any video prior to responding in writing to us, either through internal affairs or any criminal interviews. The witness officers, by that same policy, who are not involved in taking any kind of action, do not get an opportunity to look at video prior to. They write without any reviewing of the video. That's by our current policy. So later that afternoon, detectives return to police headquarters. They interview Officer Watson and other responding officers. Officer Watson prepares his statement. Mr. Bunch accompanies the detective to the office and records a statement as well. Several unsuccessful efforts are made to play the video copied to the flash drives. So we get Detective Sherry Leonard, who is the Department of Video Forensic Detective, to help us with this playing of the video. Copies of the 911 call tape of the mother's call are copied from the communications divisions. Lead detectives listen to that recording. Officer Spencer and his attorney schedule an appointment for the next day, October 15th. Detectives then return to Mr. Bunch's residence and try and record the video on their cellular phones for playback. Mr. Bunch consents to allow the detective to take his video surveillance hard drive back to Capers, back to headquarters for video retrieval. Video is then reviewed. It's about 8:30 that night of the shooting incident. And investigative meetings is then held by Major Cotner. More interviews are done. Witnesses next door are interviewed, but they didn't see the incident happening. The next day, October 15th, on Tuesday, lead detectives contact Fort Worth Police Department based on information in a 911 call from the mother that a similar incident with Mr. Bennett had happened in Fort Worth. So we were following up with Fort Worth on October 15th, whether or not they had information about a similar incident with Mr. Bennett, given the mother had said that. We now know that that incident actually happened in Euless previously. And Mr. Bennett had a gun at that point, pointed the gun at his head, put the gun in his mouth, and was taken into custody and charged with aggravated assault or the public servant. Later that same day, Detective Leonard copies the video to the hard drive. Then we begin to attempt to remove the date stamp on the video. If you see the video, there's a date stamp that covers the very top portion of the video. We began trying to remove that date stamp to get a clear view of everything that happened. We were able to remove that date stamp after several different ways. We copied it to a playable format to be able to remove it. At around 1:30 p.m. on the 15th, detectives emailed the Dallas FBI Special Agent Designee for the Civil Rights Unit advising that person of the incident that had happened, the shooting, and that additional information will be forthcoming to the Dallas FBI Special Agent. Officer Spencer on the 15th arrives and his attorney and review the video. Officer Spencer then prepares an affidavit. Let me explain, I think some of the reporting is that Officer Watson and Officer Spencer write that Mr. Bennett lunged. Officer Watson writes that Mr. Bennett took 2 steps, raised the knife in an aggressive manner. At some point, Officer Watson either sees the video on television or sees it somewhere and then comes back and writes an additional supplement to his statement. That is the point of conjecture that I had regarding supplementing the investigation. The second writings by Officer Watson is that he saw things out of sequence because of stress, that he heard the shot and thought that Mr. Bennett took 2 steps and raised the knife while falling, and that's what he remembered, out of sequence because of acute stress. There is some science about memory under acute stress. We didn't even address that in the IED investigation, so I asked that to be supplemented to address whether this was out of sequence. If you watch it, it seems that Mr. Bennett falls down by the side, doesn't take 2 steps, doesn't raise a knife, and so we need to have Officer Watson respond to an allegation. The next day, this is still the 15th, detectives return to Mr. Bunch's home and return the video hard drive back to him. We were then going to review in-car dash cam video. Both officers had in-car dash cam video, but none of the video of the officers' cars captured the event. It's the way they parked the cars in a tactical manner that canted the car away from the scene use it as cover. It's quite often the typical practice of officers to slant the car for the engine block to be for cover. So we had no in-car dash cam video. We also determined that the officers who were taser trained did not check out tasers that day at the station through detectives pulling training logs and the taser checkout log at the Southeast Patrol Division. On Wednesday, October 16th, detectives conduct a second canvassing of the neighborhood for additional witnesses. Detectives update investigative notes and work on existing cases. They conduct record searches of Mr. Bennett and find that he has a parole violation. No prior police reports are located involving Mr. Bennett besides the prior parole violation. On Thursday, the 17th, a resident from the 9400 block of Crimson Court contacts his detectives in response to a business card left on their house. During the second canvassing, witnesses shared that she and a friend observed the incident in its entirety from a parked car nearby. Detectives learned she took still photographs of Mr. Bennett while he sat in the chair. Later that day, on the 17th of October, that Thursday, SIU investigators emailed the final shooting summary with all the evidence they gathered to that point to the Dallas FBI Special Agent Designee, as was previously told to him that we would further release more information as we retrieved it. Other witnesses later that day, up to 8:30 that night on Thursday, that were identified through the canvassing are interviewed at their homes. We then contacted the Dallas FBI agent again by telephone, advising him that the video has been released to the public by the media. Officer Watson, that's when he's re-interviewed, and he's shown the video by us because he sees it on TV. He, again, writes an addendum, but the addendum still says that he's out of sequence of what happened, not that it didn't happen. All the science that I've previously read about acute stress on memory is that, yes, gaps in memory, yes, possible out of sequence of memory, but not remembering things that didn't happen. So he remembered even after the second writing that there were 2 steps and then the raised knife, but it was out of sequence of when the shot happened while falling. And what we need to get to the bottom of is there were no 2 steps. There was no raising of the knife. There was a falling down by the side, a falling down backwards possibly, depending on your angle, and acute stress from where I sit at least doesn't make you hallucinate. So we need to find out what effect, if any, acute stress has on seeing something that didn't happen. On Friday, and make sure that we note, so the 2 witnesses on Thursday that come forward, we interview them, that were in the car that saw the whole, they confirm the video's version of what happened. They don't see anything different than the video showed. That was a late evening interview. I received that information on Friday, that interview pretty much corroborates the video representation of what happened at the incident, and I then direct that the charges of aggravated assault on a public servant be dropped against Mr. Bennett. On Friday, also, Mr. Bennett is at Baylor Hospital and recuperating, and detectives go out to Baylor, visit with him, read him his Miranda rights before the charges are dropped, interview him. He gives a statement that he was suicidal and was intent during the incident to have police shoot him. Detectives then learn about the Euless incident on Friday as well, where Mr. Bennett on March 16, 1998, had a handgun and pointed it at Euless police officer, pointed at his own head, Mr. Bennett's own head, and then put the gun in his mouth. He was charged again, as I mentioned earlier, with aggravated assault on a public servant, felony 1. In that previous incident in Euless in '98, Mr. Bennett asked the officers to hurt him and kill him. Lead detectives later that evening on Friday report that a court order for Mr. Bennett's Baylor Hospital medical records be retrieved. District judge signs that court order. Detectives then assist Mr. Bennett's mother in visiting him at Baylor, and we also assist Mr. Bennett's father in visiting him at Baylor that previously was restricted. Then on Monday, October 21st, SIU detectives referred their findings to DPD's Internal Affairs Division. The Internal Affairs case starts Monday, concludes on yesterday, and we have the hearing today. Quite a bit of work, really not what's been reported previously, that we did nothing until the media aired. And with that, I'll take questions.
Chief,
and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to call on you, right? And then we'll try to go as many rounds as we need to go. Have a little bit of order, because I'm sure you all have a lot of questions. I want to try to answer all of them. James, go ahead.
Chief, what troubles you most about this incident?
Officer Spencer didn't follow our policy as it relates to responding to mental health issues. Didn't follow our practice of responding, and didn't follow our training. That's the most troubling.
And that was readily evident to you upon looking at the tape, or waiting until you got all the facts?
Well, what I mentioned before is it's important to follow the investigative process for fairness and impartiality and credibility for the investigation. Many cases are lost because of this rush to judgment, because of media pressure, political pressure, or whatever. You know, I thought it was really important to canvass as many times in that neighborhood as possible, to make sure that there wasn't something that the video didn't see, didn't show. And not until Thursday did we really feel comfortable that everyone that saw anything had come forward, had been contacted and given us a statement. Everything was consistent up to Thursday or Friday. And that's when we began taking action in a different direction, when we had a real good feeling that all the evidence had been, that we made a great effort at gathering all the evidence and talked to as many witnesses as possible to make sure there was nothing that the video didn't show. Rebecca, yes?
Chief, how does the probable cause affidavit get written and approved and charges on their way to being filed against him, even though the video's been seen?
Right. The unfortunate thing here is that Officer Watson's statement really overrode what the video showed. We had not, at that point, determined that the video captured the entire incident, or that the video had not been altered anyway. We put a lot of credibility in officer statements, and until we have other evidence to prove otherwise. That happened in this case, and we dropped the charges once we had that other evidence to show that what the officer statements were was contradictory to what the video, and that the video showed the entire incident without alteration, and witnesses supported what the video said. Yes?
Talk about your concern about that. The fact that, you said you give a lot of credibility to what officers say, and in this case, video happened to capture the opposite of what happened. Are you concerned that this has happened before, and that there's a culture of that within the department, and if so, how do you want to change that and get the trust of the public back?
All chiefs around all the major cities and even mid-sized, small cities have really struggled with this particular issue. This happens way too often in this country, not just in Dallas, where officer statements end up being not factual. Just one time it happening just paints everyone in a broad brush, because that's your question, is it? This is one time paint everyone in a broad brush. And I can just tell you one thing that I've just taken as really important to do is what I've done here. A fair and impartial investigation. Take the time to go through a process to get to the truth that's credible, not rushed, under pressure, under any political influence, when you find the answer, take swift, strong action. That's what we've done here. But going forward, most of law enforcement is really understanding the powerful nature of video and the advent of body cameras on officers and mandating that they be engaged on every contact, I think is the future of law enforcement. And I'm open and actually taking steps to see how our department can pilot a body camera program that would be mandated on every interaction. And that's not a small thing, that's a big thing. We have over 500,000 dispatch calls, over 200,000 traffic stops each year. So we're upwards of 700,000 interactions with the public that would have to be captured on video, and you have to build the infrastructure to store that much data, build retention schedules that's practical. But that is, I believe, the future of law enforcement. Talking with my peers in other cities about this, it's where I think we end up. It's just how quickly, how practical is it to store and write the policies and build the infrastructure to do it. But that's the third piece. But when you find that officers have not been factual, a fair and impartial investigation, swift, strong action to send a message, not only to the public, but to your organization, to officers in your organization. And then the next steps are, I think the future of video and law enforcement is going to intersect pretty quickly here to be able to capture all of these interactions on video so that you would have that mandated for every officer to engage that video. Dash cam can only get so much of it because it's, you know, if I'm parking my car and I'm trying to protect myself as I get out of the car from whatever might happen to me, it's going to turn the camera away from the incident as part of our tactical response. Yes, LP.
You've spoken a little bit about what you thought as an administrator looking at that video. As a cop, when you first saw it, what was your reaction the first time? And did anything in today's hearing that might not have been apparent in the video change your perception of that?
Right. So if you look at that video as a cop, you try to wonder what's missing. That there has to be some other things that happened that didn't get captured by the video, and so you look for evidence of that. That what did the video not show? But at the end of the day, cops are not superhuman. They have fear, but that fear has to be reasonable. I mean, much of what we do is very traumatic, and engaging, whether it's a very violent criminal suspect or someone having an episode from some mental health issue, those are very traumatic experiences, and managing your fear is part of what we train for. Time and distance, as I mentioned before, are what the things that keep us alive and help protect citizens from undue force. We're always looking for training opportunities to avoid these type incidents from happening, but at the end of the day, managing your fears, all cops have it. It's managing it to where your actions come under some reasonableness standard and not what happened here. Yes, Stephanie.
Can you give us a kind of a scenario of what happened up there in the hearing this morning, since we weren't able to be up there? Officer Spencer, what was his demeanor? What was that like?
Very regretful, very, very emotional. This is his career. This is potentially his freedom, depending on the adjudication process in the court system. This officer has a family. These are not easy decisions. I always say, but for the grace of God, go I on these incidents. Managing your fear is easy to say when you're sitting Monday morning quarterbacking these incidents. There was a lot of things said on the 911 tape that got forwarded to the officer regarding the violent nature of Mr. Bennett's actions. There was a lot of things said that he had done it before and had a gun last time, and this time had a knife, wanted police to shoot him. But once you get to the scene and he's sitting in that chair and all he does is stand up, time and distance is what prevents you from using deadly force, and that just wasn't done here. Yes, Mike?
You're saying that, in your opinion, that Officer Spencer's fears just weren't reasonable, but that there is a chance that Mr. Bennett, in this case, was actually trying to commit suicide by an officer?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying we interviewed Mr. Spencer, and he interviewed Mr. Bennett, and he says that in an interview that was recorded, that it was his intent to commit suicide by having an officer shoot him. That's a recorded interview. And again, Mr. Bennett is not still in the best mental state. He suffers from, according to his mother, mental health issues, and so the mother does say that same thing to us on the 911 tape, is that he's wanting the officer to shoot him. The mother says that as well. And so it's not me saying, I'm just recounting what the mother said and recounting what Mr. Bennett said in the interview. Yes, Tanya.
You know, I understand the credibility to officers, but you have a situation where you have a tape, and the guys in the hospital, I just don't understand why the rush to go ahead and file that aggravated assault charge. Why not?
Say that again. Write a rush and do what?
Why did y'all go ahead? You do have the video. You have this discrepancy with what Watson's saying. Why do that? Why not wait? Why not wait a couple days to get that PCA on Mr. Bennett? Until you can see if there's more video or there's something else going on.
Again, it just speaks to the credibility of officers' statements. We had no reason to believe the officer statement wasn't true. It's a lot of weight put on what an officer says, which goes right back to the importance of officers being factual as much as they can. But it also speaks to this issue of our policy, where witness officers can't overcome. I think the science is true, whether it was accurate here, that there's some impact on memory under acute stress, even for witness officers. But we don't allow them to view the video. And so they're recounting, and there's some impact. What impact, I don't know. We'll get to the bottom of that. But I think you're trying to make a case that you wait, don't take the officer's statement as fact. And we're saying we believe that the majority of our officers, if not all, they recount things pretty accurately. We're really taken aback that the first statement written by Officer Watson is not what happened. We're really struggling with how did he see something that didn't happen, even under stress, even with the impacts of stress on memory. How did he see something that didn't happen? I could see it being out of sequence. I could see not seeing it, having a gap in memory. We're struggling with, and that's why I asked for a supplemental investigation for us to question him more. But we're going to have to depend on the officers' statements to be able to file charges, and then we build a case from there. It's how everyone's treated. If you think about what ended up happening to Officer Spencer, we took evidence and that we got kind of a closed case on Friday, and we got to this week, and we just had to finish the administrative parts because of employment law. Just waiting for anything, because let me walk you through employment law. Although we can't use anything that we compel an officer to say against him in a criminal case, here's how it really works and plays out. The officer may start saying something that the internal affairs investigator says, stop writing, stop talking to us. We'll bring back in our criminal investigators to start an interview, to see if we can file charges or if something changed to impact the criminal investigation. That's why we didn't file the charges against the Officer Spencer, until after we got completely through the internal affairs case, because there could have been a timeout part of the interview. That has happened on several different investigations where some parts of the interview began going into criminal aspects. We stopped it, and then we started back the criminal case. It's what happens on the case where Mr. Bradford was killed. We closed out the criminal, felt like we didn't have enough, started the administrative. The administrative indicated there was some criminal information. We stopped the IAD, started back the criminal, finished the criminal, were able to charge the officer, and then started back the internal affairs case. So it really goes back to some of the questions I've had earlier about where does law enforcement go from here regarding the one time or small number of times that officers are found to be not truthful in these very critical incidents. And like I mentioned before, and I'll repeat again, fair and impartial investigation, not rushed because of media pressure, not rushed because of political pressure, not tried in public, but clearly impartial. When you find that an officer has given you information that caused you to file a charge on someone who's not guilty of that, didn't do that, swift disciplinary action, strong message to the department and to the public. And then I think the way forward is, how do we capture these interactions where the officer statements are not the only way you determine what happened? And I think body cameras is what's happening across the country in a very small way, but I think that's the future of law enforcement, to where officers are engaged, and we're looking to pilot something and trying to find funding sources for it. Let's start back here, and then I'll come back around over here. What's your name again? I hadn't seen you before.
It's Melmont Merchant with AP.
Okay.
Chief, what would have been the right way for this investigation, or for this call to have been handled? What would have been the right way for these officers to approach this defendant?
Very good question. I forgot to mention. The right way was actually happening. The sergeant acknowledged that this was a call that needed more officers to respond. So number one, more officers needed to respond, and a supervisor needed to respond. The supervisor acknowledged that he was on the way. He then began asking additional officers to respond. He then ordered an ambulance. But for the 27 seconds that Spencer took to use his firearm, there was a great potential that this could have been resolved without any force used. Once the officers got there, you keep your distance. As I mentioned, neither officer had a taser, but we don't recommend taser use in these situations as the first thing you do. Tasers have kind of a mixed bag. You talk to a lot of different law enforcement agencies. Some are going against tasers, using tasers. Under these type of calls, tasers can sometimes escalate people and not have the effect at all on them that taser would have someone in a normal circumstance. But again, time and distance, more officers there, supervisor on the scene, ambulance on the scene, and take it slow. Time's on your side to de-escalate the situation. That's what should have been done. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to verify, and then I have a question. It is aggravated assault that Officer Spencer is charged with, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you go into a little bit of detail at why you came to that? Because it does seem like you believe that it was overreaction on fear. That, depending on the debate versus actually charging him with something, what led you down that road?
Officers are not above the law. If this officer was a regular citizen, that's what we charge him with. And it's cut it dry as that. Yes, ma'am.
Joyce Jackson's mother said that when she called 911 that they told her they were going to send over officers with special
That's accurate.
So was Carter Spencer, was he one of the ones that had special mental health?
Every officer goes through critical incident training on mental health in the police academy. And then there are some officers that go through additional training through our in-service training that officers go through as required to keep their license. So every officer has this training. It's part of our standard operating procedure, it's part of our general orders, part of our policy, training and practice. They just didn't follow it. Yes, both had gone through the police academy and received the training, and they had gone through our in-service training called CORE that's required to keep your police officer license. They had gone through that training as well. They just didn't follow the training or the policies or the practice. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. So if you think about this scenario, if it were different and Mr. Bennett did lunge at,
No, I'm saying that it happened just the way they said, except nobody attempted to get it wrong in any fashion. Would he still have been charged with aggravated assault?
don't know. I'm not dealing with that scenario. It's hard to speculate there. We'll see what happens on an investigation of that nature. Hard to speculate, yes.
After Officer Spencer viewed the video, how did he explain his actions to investigate?
He tried to explain that Mr. Bennett had clenched his fist, clenched the knife in his hand, and he perceived him as making a move toward him. And you just don't see that on video. Yes.
You talk about Mr. Bennett's history. Didn't Officer Spencer though also have been involved in another police shooting back in '09?
Yes.
Maybe there were questions about where he was standing at the time of that shooting?
That particular shooting in 2009, Officer Spencer was involved in, involved other officers, involved a robbery suspect, and there were no questions about his behavior being in violation of policy or in violation of any of our training or practices. Yes.
Chief, you talked a lot about time and distance and fears and reasonable fears and media coverage and how all of this has sort of intertwined over the last few days of this investigation.
Right.
Are you concerned that any of this is going to make some of your officers hesitate in that critical moment now in the field because they're thinking about all that has happened as a result of this?
Yeah, you know, law enforcement is not for everyone. It's a tough job in a big city. Yes, officers may have some apprehension. And it's my job and the job of every officer in this department to stay encouraged, stay safe, and protect the citizens of Dallas. It's not easy, though. It's high criticism, hypercriticism in some cases, but we have one of the best departments in the country. I sincerely believe that. And this is one of the best cities to police in. And I visit every quarter with all the major city chiefs, every quarter. I just came back from a really short visit, and every time I hear about the issues in other cities, I come back home grateful that I'm in Dallas, that I'm a Dallas cop, and that we have the support of Dallas citizens. Yes, Stephanie?
In terms of videotaping every incident, this goal that you have in the future, what type of resistance or hesitation do you expect from officers?
You know, there's some. When we went in-car dash cam, there was some. So you have to work through that and power forward. And much of what's caught on tape, this is our in-car dash cam video, supports officers. It's that outlier, what we're here today for. It's that thing that just rarely happens, but when it happens, it's one too many times, right? So that'll be the selling point for officers again, but you're gonna have some resistance. I'm not naive about resistance from officers on changes, but we'll power through that and do the right thing for Dallas. Yes, James?
Chief, given Officer Watkins' initial accounts, did the investigators kind of say, well, if all that's true, then why did you not fire?
They didn't address it, and that's the supplemental investigation I want conducted. That needs to be addressed and have Watson respond to that Q&A. That narrative never happened. He was sustained for not following the mental health policy, but there wasn't an allegation for him to respond to on what he said he saw and the sequence of when he saw it, not matching both versions of what he wrote. So that'll be forthcoming. Yes, Tristan.
On the notice that went out that there was a supplemental investigation, it said that Watson remains on restricted duty.
Yes.
Was he on restricted duty?
He was. He was on restricted duty before. Well, one more. I want to make sure everybody gets however many rounds, because I've got a lot of questions previously. I want to make sure you get everything. Sean?
You talked about the inability of Officer Spencer to manage fear
Yes.
at that moment. And certainly we all understand that pressure. What's most egregious for you in this incident, sir? His inability at that moment, those 27 seconds, or Christopher Watson's statements?
I think they both created problems for the department's trust and confidence from citizens. And again, the most egregious, though, is Mr. Bennett being shot. Thank God he survived. But a very close second is our credibility issue with citizens that were telling the truth, particularly on police shootings. That is as important than almost anything we do, that citizens trust us. So they're both very, very high on my list of importance. Yes, Tanya?
What does the witness that was in the car say she saw?
Pretty much everything that's on the video. That Mr. Bennett sat, stood, and then was shot in short order. Yes?
Is Spencer in custody right now? Was he taken into custody after the hearing, or where does this?
I'm not sure. I've been down here with you all. I'm not sure.
Has a warrant been signed?
I'm not sure yet. I've been down here with you all. That process started as I walked down here. I'll update you on you as soon as I know what's transpired since I've been down here. Yes?
And Melissa was after the shooting. She saw Officer Spencer pick up the bullets from the crime scene. Did you guys find that in your investigation too?
I don't recall finding that. I can get back with you on that. I do recall crime scene technicians who responded retrieved the casings. That's what you're talking about, the casings. I don't recall any reports showing that Spencer picked up his own casings. But I'll definitely follow up with you on that. Okay. Make sure I answered everybody. Anything else? Yes. I don't know that. We canvassed twice, and we got a phone call back that we thought they had video, but they ended up having still photos. And I wouldn't be surprised if they saw it multiple times on television, because that was around the time it was being showed on television on every channel. So I would suspect that they did see it on video, on television, the video on television. No. Yes, Tristan. I'll go back around again. I see you got it.
If it wasn't for having this video, where would this investigation stand now, and do you think it would still be the same?
We would have canvassed. We would have tried to gather evidence. The people in the car would have weighed heavily against the officer's statement, because they would have conflicted. There would have been two independent witnesses conflicted with one officer. That would have persuaded us to re-interview the officer and see if something was different. But again, we do have a video, and we do have corroboration of the video from independent witnesses. Yes, Stephanie?
Chief, will the department supply us with a picture of Officer Spencer? I don't know if you can answer this question, but do you anticipate any charges or disciplinary action against Officer Watson?
Let me answer the second question first. I'm going to try as much as I can to restrain from commenting, given the perception from the officers in the department that I make decisions before I hear them out, or that an investigation is done, that it's not fair, it's not impartial, it's not objective, that because of media pressure or political pressure, they're thrown under the bus and not given a fair chance. And so I'm going to withhold until after the internal affairs supplemental investigation is complete. Things I say weigh on an officer. They listen very closely. Their attorneys listen very closely. for defense. And so I have to be very, very disciplined and responding, even under the extreme pressure we've had this 10 days to get to the truth and make sure it's impartial. I thought I saw other hands go up. Oh, yes, we'll get a picture. Yes, we'll get a picture to you. Anyone else? I want to make sure.
I do have one more.
Yes.
Should the department reconsider its policy of showing officers the video?
Yes.
In other words, I don't think
Yes.
they do that for me.
This has been hotly debated amongst the major city chiefs organization, the association I'm a member of. There's 30-something big city chiefs in that organization. Every time we poll, it's split right down the middle. Half the room, the chiefs in the room say, don't show them anything, let them write. The other half says, show them video so they can recall their memories because the science supports that there's some memory impact on acute stress. I have not weighed in, but this incident really brings it home for me, is that the public's perception, especially, if Watson had just seen the video, maybe his memory, whatever impact the acute stress had on it, may have given him the opportunity to write something more accurate. So I think I'm pursuing, looking at, or having my staff recommend their thoughts on changing that protocol. It's a long-standing practice of not showing witness officers video. Witness officers don't get a lawyer before they talk to us, only the accused officer. And so they go by recollection. And I'm one of the few chiefs on our command staff I've been involved in a shooting. I've been shot at. I didn't know what direction I came from. I had gaps in my memory. It wasn't until 2 or 3 days later where I remembered it accurately. And so it has some impact. Again, with Watson, the issue is, I don't know that there's anything to support that the impact on acute stress gives you something that makes you recall something that didn't happen. That really is the crux of the supplemental investigation, is that he recounts in both statements something that didn't happen, not a gap, not out of sequence. He recounts that Mr. Bennett took 2 steps toward him and raised a knife in an aggressive manner. When the video shows, he didn't take any steps forward. He stands up and actually takes 2 steps back, gets shot, and falls sideways. Anyone else?
I was just curious, you had mentioned, lobbying for cost of getting the different cameras on the actual uniform of the officer. How soon in reality do you think that could be?
You know, the city of Nashville probably has the best body camera program. Every officer in patrol, I talked to their chief 2 or 3 days ago about it, and we'll be visiting that city to see how it works, see how quickly we can start looking at it and finding a funding source.
Do you want to know now?
Oh yes, definitely. Fast and in a hurry. Anybody else? Thank you all very much.